Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Coin is Extra Virtual Weekly Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Panel Discussion. Actually, this episode is the 22nd episode. So we have personalities in the space who will be talking about opportunities in blockchain and cryptocurrency. So joining us today we have Gabriel Gostin. Gabriel Gostin is co-founder at Blockchain Leaders. Chabel, you're welcome. Sorry, I called you Gabriel. Chabel, you're welcome to Coinbase Extra.
Thank you, Lee, for your kind invitation. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Also joining us is Julian Gossi. Julian Gossi is a former European Parliament candidate and blockchain expert. Julian, you're welcome to Coinbase Extra.
Thank you very much, but I'm not an expert. I'm just learning and passionate about blockchain.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. So also joining us is Wasim Jakas. Wasim Jakas is a 4G, 5G blockchain and telecom expert. Wasim, you're welcome to Coinbase Extra.
Thank you, Yuli. It's a pleasure to be on this show. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you. So also joining us is Tony Moroni. Tony Moroni is managing partner, Beta Digital. Tony, you're welcome to Coinbase Extra.
Thank you, Lee. I'm looking forward to hearing from all these experts because I am not the expert in blockchain.
It's a pleasure to have you. So these personalities, we have each of them joining from a particular country. Tony and Julian is joining us they are from Ireland, though joining us from different locations in Ireland. We also have Chabel and Wasim joining us. They are from the same country, Lebanon. So they are in different locations. Chabel is in Dubai and Wasim is in Bahrain. It's our pleasure to have you all. So today we'll be talking about opportunities in blockchain and cryptocurrency. We've seen what COVID-19 have done to nations, to humanity. So we are seeing people are now looking for alternative ways to find end means. So we want to look at some of the opportunities that are in blockchain and cryptocurrency. So we start with what is the current state? We want to know the current state of blockchain and cryptocurrency because many sectors of economy have been affected. So we want to know the state of blockchain and cryptocurrency this pandemic period. So let me start with Chabe. Chabe, what's the current state of blockchain? Maybe you can start with your region. How was the state of blockchain and cryptocurrency?
First I would like to thank you again, Lee, for giving us this opportunity to discuss this subject during these days and during the pandemic. Well, I believe that blockchain is kind of, let's say, financial vaccine for COVID-19 because as we know that Bitcoin emerged after the 2008 crisis. And I'm sure that the changing consumer needs during and post the pandemic, in addition to, let's say, the rapid technological development, will give a massive push to cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general. So there's a lot of opportunities to discuss, and blockchain and cryptocurrencies will have huge potential in the coming 2 or 3 days related to finance, banking, and multiple sectors.
Interesting. Wasim, what's the state of blockchain and crypto over there?
I would agree with what Charbel has mentioned. Actually, it's a very interesting definition of saying a vaccine for the current economic situation. That's a very intriguing statement, actually. From a regulatory and uptake perspective in our region, in Bahrain, probably in Middle East overall, there is a lot of vibe within the public. There is a lot of awareness being spread amongst the public. However, initiatives are still limited to sandbox kind of regulatory frameworks where institutions and venturers into the blockchain area are functioning within the boundaries of sandbox regulations, which is good to a certain extent. Interestingly enough, just a couple of days ago in Bahrain, there has been a launch for e-tax, which is basically taxation over a blockchain that is going to be sponsored and facilitated with the government. So that was a very interesting development, seeing that the blockchain initiatives are picking up and are supported by governments. So in short, there is an uptake. Awareness is spreading more and more. Regulatory frameworks are evolving around the blockchain. But I believe blockchain by nature, being that disruptive technology that is probably touching upon all the verticals of our potentially day-to-day life, there is still a long way to go for the mass adoption. Certain areas probably faster than other areas, but I think the outlook is quite positive and awareness is being spread.
Interesting. Tony, what's your take on what's the state of crypto and blockchain over there in Ireland?
I think if you look at, and I agree with the guys, I think if you look at the pandemic that would come through, it's probably created two pressure points. One is around global supply chains. So I think blockchain is going to come into its own in terms of understanding your supplies, where they're coming from, where are things in your supply chain. But I think in terms of finance, I think the big issue is that we've had a shift away from cash, real big acceleration in terms of a move to digital, and a question then being asked by governments and central banks and indeed individuals in terms of, well, where does digital money, be it e-money, cryptocurrencies, where does this all fit and how is it going to play out in the future? And I think my sense is there's a big debate going on at the moment in terms of, yes, we should have, digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, on the basis that there's some indication of value. But I think what governments are trying to work through is, how do you make sure the system is secure and offers customers the same level of protection, but at the same time opens up the system so you can bring more people in? And I think that debate is going to accelerate further over the next few months. But I think, cryptocurrencies are here. And I think, banks, we look at what's been happening around the world with banks starting to, in the US, the regulators allow banks now to act as custodians. If you look at some of the things happening in Europe where banks are actually making payments through cryptocurrencies, I think, we're going to see a big shift over the next year or two in this whole area.
Interesting. That's a nice one. Seeing banks showing interest and participating in it. Julia, what's your take on
Well,
that?
the current state, there is nothing hotter than DeFi at the moment in this space. Now, DeFi, for your listeners and watchers who may not know, is decentralized finance. That is just exploding at the moment. Now, it's exploding in a good and bad ways. Decentralized finance is really where you take the middleman out of everything. So people set up protocols. If they set up, they call it yield farming. So you can buy a certain coin and you stake your coin, you leave it there, and you get interest paid on it. And there's been some projects like the YAM project, which you may have heard about. I think like 400 million flowed in about a day. And then the people in it said, well, we haven't actually have our code audited yet. And then someone spotted a flaw in the governance, and it all collapsed, totally collapsed. But I think there's been a resurgence because the community really wants it to work. So they're going back to try to make it work. And then there was also the sushi swap. I don't know if you follow that. A similar story, but it was set up by an anonymous. It was Chef Sushi or Nami, whatever his name was. And then apparently he took billions out, and of course it collapsed. So what's really exciting about it is it's like the ICO period, but on steroids. So I'm not advocating that people get into the DeFi straight away because there are lots and lots of glitches. But it does show there's an appetite because people don't trust the banks anymore. They don't know what to do with their money. There's negative interest. So this is an area that will stay and grow. Right now, it's the Wild West, and it's fun to watch. I wouldn't like to put my money into any of these projects because they seem a bit weird. But that's the evolution of nature of the beast, because as time goes on, people will figure out how to make them safe, and how, like with the sushi swap, that only happened 2 days ago, where the main developer took all the money out. These things will be sorted. So it's very exciting, a bit chaotic, but very exciting.
Interesting, because the current state over here in Africa, the current state of cryptocurrency and blockchain is amazing because things are getting better over here. People looking for alternative for remittance and investment, so they are seeing it as a safe haven to make their investment and put their money over there. So that's a very nice and good development for the people that are in the space. So you made mention about the sushi and yam. Yes, things are recovering and things are getting better. There's this term in cryptocurrency which is do your own due diligence whatever you are doing. So that takes us to the next question. We've been able to know the state of blockchain and cryptocurrency at this pandemic period. So, what are some of the opportunities? We'll be looking at some of the opportunities for people in the financial sector. What are some of the opportunities that cryptocurrency and blockchain present to them? And let me start with Tony. Tony, what are some of the opportunities for people in the financial sector in
Well,
blockchain?
I think one of the big opportunities that I see coming down the road is in the whole area of tokenization, because when you got crises, you got liquidity push, and then firms look for, well, how do we create more liquidity? And I think there's an opportunity to take assets that were traditionally illiquid and to use blockchain and tokens to create new forms of liquidity. And I think that's something that is going to be looked at. I also think that there's probably going to be a harder push towards some sort of stable coins where there's more predictability in terms of value. And I think there are probably two things that I see coming down the tracks in the short term.
Interesting. Gabriel, Chambel, what's your take on that? I don't know why I keep calling you Gabriel. Chambel, what's your take?
Yeah, effectively, I do believe that what Gillian mentioned regarding DeFi, yes, it will have a huge impact on financial sector, DeFi, because the reason that Bitcoin and blockchain showed a successful experience for let's say, for people, for transactions and peer-to-peer without this intermediary part. So I believe that the application like peer-to-peer payment, lending, also something like decentralized stock markets will be seen more and more in the financial world. Also, there's the interesting scandal of Wirecard. We all heard about it like last month. What happened with Wirecard will open doors for not only DeFi, but for a blockchain to be used within what we call currently fintech companies or fintech associations to secure more and more the daily, let's say, applications and transactions in fintech enterprises.
Interesting. Julian, what's the opportunities for people in the financial sector when it comes to blockchain and crypto?
You provided us with the questions beforehand, so we had a thought. And I misread this question, but I want to answer it the way I misread it, if you don't mind. Because I read it, what are the opportunities for people in finance, to gain finance in blockchain and cryptocurrency? And we all know that part of the problem with why people want mass adoption of cryptocurrencies, well, people who believe in it, obviously, and it's to help mostly the unbanked, of which there are 1.7 billion, and in the African continent, makes up a huge number of those people. And part of the problem is getting people on board. And then how do you earn crypto? Because that's very hard. If you don't, unless you're working for a big company, how do you earn crypto? Maybe you got a smartphone. And then if you do earn crypto, how do you spend it? Because typically if you're unbanked, it means you don't have a bank, it means you can't do the KYC for your exchanges. You can't, if you do earn crypto, how do you exit it into fiat? Because you can't get onto the exchanges to get out. I mean, one project I was talking to recently is Electronium. It's a UK-based protocol. And they have brought out this thing called Anytask. And the reason why I jumped to this, because I used it recently, and a Nigerian student helped me lay out a book that I published during the lockdown. And the Anytask, you actually get paid in the ETN coin. This young man did a great job. He was a student. I don't know he was banked, so he was using this service. But what ETN does is they've made deals in 140 countries where you can actually use your ETN to pay for minutes on your phone. And then moreover, in four countries now in the African continent, I forget which ones, one of them is Senegal, you can actually use these ETN coins to pay for your utilities. And the CEO of this company, Richard Ells, is making huge efforts to link up with medicines, groceries, so people can earn the cryptocurrency and then spend them in a meaningful way without necessarily needing a bank at all. So I'm very sorry, I'm answering your question the wrong way, but I just think because especially that young Nigerian student who helped me with my book only last month, and I paid him $30. And I understand $30 is quite a good wage. I think it's the average, what's the average daily wage in Nigeria? Do you know?
In monthly is around 50,000 naira.
And what's that in euros? Do we know? Well,
That should be around 100 or $110.
okay. Well, so I think I paid him a fair price. For me, it was very good value, but he got to earn it. So anyway, that was just, I read it wrong, read the question wrong, but I really wanted to flag it because the whole thing is how do you complete the circle? How do you earn crypto and then how do you spend it? And this project to me seems like a great example of making it meaningful.
Interesting. Wasim, what was your take on that?
Actually, I would second probably and emphasize what has been mentioned by Gillian regarding the DeFi, decentralized finance. There are honestly huge opportunities by getting rid of the intermediaries and leveraging on smart contracts into some specific investment with some returns that are embedded in those decentralized finance contracts. And you can transparently track and see how these contracts are evolving through websites or portals. That is pretty much okay, but I would really dread that such initiatives get killed in their infancy state. The same thing that happened in the ICOs and the hype of ICOs, where basically the potential was huge in order to raise capital for investments that do not easily have recourse to capital and investment through ICOs, but then because of the lack of regulation and the scams that was around all these ICOs, I mean, the trust has collapsed as quickly as it has risen. And we don't want really to see this happening to decentralized finance, to DeFi, because there is a huge opportunity, especially for the unbanked, in order to raise capital into some specific investment and have full transparency on how these smart contracts are actually operating. So this is from finance perspective, but from economic perspective, I think especially now after the COVID and all these incentives and bailouts that are taking place, whether in Europe, in the US, and other parts of the country, we can see how the inflation and the prediction of the inflation that is happening for the currencies, the US, the euro, the British pounds. Now, I think blockchain and cryptocurrency overall has the potential of fighting this hyperinflation that is evidently going to take place with all the pumping of the bailouts that are taking place, especially now in the COVID and post-COVID. And we have seen very clear signs in the recent uptake and increase and rallies that are happening for Bitcoins and the like of Bitcoins, that it's very well positioned to fight hyperinflation in order to maintain the purchasing power of that unit of currency you are having, whether that currency is a cryptocurrency or whether it is a fiat like the US dollars and the euro. Another thing I would like to touch upon, Lee, here is basically outside the realm of finance as opportunities, especially for the youth, is the DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organization, and the digital apps that can be developed, and the youth can leverage those platforms where
Wasim, we have not got into that. We are still at the sorry, I have to cut it short because that's where we are going to be entering. So I was trying to say something concerning financial sector, what it has really done. So I said earlier on that it helps in remittance. So coming to the youth, how youth and millennials can leverage on blockchain. So we've seen how many people are at home and they are looking for a way to make ends meet. And what we believe cryptocurrencies can over here in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. We've seen many youths learning about blockchain programming because there is a high demand for blockchain programmers, so people are going into it. Some youths over here are also becoming ambassadors to different blockchain and crypto projects, and they are being paid very well. So that brings us, let me continue with you, Wasim. Some of the opportunities for youth and millennials when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrencies? You can continue.
Probably I jumped on this topic quite quickly, but it was related to the opportunities that are outside the realm of finance. So it is actually true that with the decentralized autonomous organization and the D-apps associated with that, the youth can have a native recruitment platforms where they can be simply contracted for development of certain applications and certain capabilities that can be used and then can be implemented in organizations that are requiring those applications and natively can earn money from these applications. As mentioned by Jillian, I think rightfully the Electronium, I think she mentioned the ETN. It's one of the probably the obvious early implementation of that, specifically in Africa, where they are banking the unbanked. And they are using a similar model where the youth can go simply develop their applications and then natively on these digital apps start earning money on those efforts. And again, recruitment platforms, there are a couple of recruitment platforms on the blockchain that are emerging right now where the youth can actually be recruited on these blockchains and earn on the same blockchain on which they have been recruited. So there is a lot of potential for the youth, especially in the new generation that's coming, because this is a digital generation and all of these capabilities are driven by this digital transformation. So there is a lot of potential.
Interesting. Tony, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at it from a user perspective, I mean, look, I think the youth are already mobile and digital, so they actually lend themselves perfectly to a world of digital money. So I think what we're going to see is more demands coming through from youth in terms of all sort of different types of digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, you name it. So I think that's going to be driven by demand. I think from the youth perspective, it also, you know, it's a very simple way for access. It's a good way for security and transparency. So I think it's going to be demand driven. I think the other thing that we're seeing around the world is that the youth in the crisis were investing in tech stocks and Bitcoins directly. So there is a view coming through the youth markets that the future payment system is up for grabs. And I think, you know, it will be pushed by them.
Interesting. It will be pushed by them. Julian, what are some of the opportunities for youth and millennials?
Well, I'm going to echo what Tony and Wassim have said already, that Electronium is a great project. I love that. And what's nice about the Electronium is that you can be a designer, you can just own a smartphone, and you can be a logo designer. You don't have to be a technical person. So a couple of things. Yes, youth are digital. They're native. It's like, for example, if you ask somebody, you remember those old-fashioned dial phones? Young people haven't got a clue what they are. You know, it's not a mobile. They're going, what is? You put it to your ear. What is that? And that's moved so quickly. So the youth are well positioned. Obviously, if you're a developer, LinkedIn has done studies that people who are blockchain developers can command a premium, and the jobs are very, very. There's lots of jobs there, so that's really handy. But you don't have to be a programmer to avail of what's happening. I interviewed the CEO of Splinterlands yesterday. Splinterlands is the most popular blockchain game on the blockchain, and it's on the Hive blog, which is a blogging site which is forked from the Steemit blog, the Dan Larimer original venture. But this is interesting. You don't have to have money. If you want to play Splinterlands, which is a card trading game, you can go on for free. You can then you play a bit of your game, you go and blog about it, you earn, people tip you, you earn your points on the blog, you go back and you can buy your cards. So that's kind of, you can be gaming in esports is a huge business. And then also, I think as well, very shortly, we won't be talking about blockchain anymore. It'll be ubiquitous. It's like no one says, I'm on the interweb today. And, you know, if you're selling books on your online store, you don't say, you know, it's on the internet, it's on the interweb. It's there, it's online. So I think that there'll be so many opportunities that we won't even know that they're on blockchain, but blockchain will deliver the transparency, the provenance. Digital art, another area, so fast growing. Sites like Pixios, where you can actually create non-fungible tokens. And these are unique digital assets. And I created one over, I was very creative over the lockdown, actually. I wrote a book and did some painting, and I set up the first crypto art. And it's a unique piece of art on the blockchain. How amazing is that? So artists who have been very badly hit by the pandemic, because artists and singers and all that, they're looking at NFTs and non-fungible tokens and trying to sell their stuff, collectibles or original pieces of art, or numbers of prints of different things on the blockchain. So many opportunities.
Interesting. Chabel, what's your take? What are some of the opportunities?
Well, I totally agree with guys regarding what they mentioned. Just to add one more point, in general, consumer behavior is changing globally, not only when it comes to youth or Generation Z, that what we call. The COVID-19 pandemic also highlighted its relevance at a time when people have been either unable or preferring to avoid physical services. So some products that have seen the biggest increase in transactions include the online banking and for sure cryptocurrencies. There's a huge demand on e-commerce payments. So indirectly people are asking sometimes and they are using the new blockchain applications and smart contracts even without knowing. So yes, as Gillian mentioned, no one will talk on blockchain later on. We'll talk about application based on blockchain. So you don't tell that I'm using the TCP/IP protocol currently in the internet. Well, it's the laying infrastructure out there since the 70s. So yeah, applications and youth and Generation Z will be the one who will push for new and let's say innovative applications in that terms.
Thank you very much. In case you're just joining us, this is CoinNews Extra Weekly Virtual Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Panel Discussion Episode 22. And we have our guests who are speaking on the topic opportunities in blockchain and cryptocurrency. And this program is proudly sponsored by MTech, Nemedis Ecosystem, and Hotcoin. So we are trying to say we have a few questions. We are rounding up for this session. So we've been able to talk about some opportunities for youth when it comes to crypto and blockchain. So we want to look at some of the opportunities in crypto and blockchain for governments and some nations. So what are some of the opportunities or what's in for nations and governments? Wasim, let me start with you.
So probably, as we mentioned earlier, fighting the hyperinflation and creating the central bank digital currencies or stable currencies, as mentioned by Tony. This is going to be one of the major opportunities for governments and going digital all the way, reducing the cost of production of those currencies and creating what we can call a pragmatic governance model that's going to emerge out of this initiatives or out of the government adoption of the central bank digital currencies. There will be a totally new governance model that's going to emerge, and that governance model will help fight all the fraudulent behaviors and the activities that are related to some fraudulent behavior, which governments are actually spending a lot of money and effort and personnel trying to identify it and fighting it. With this new governance model associated with the blockchain, it will be much straightforward and much easier for governments to fight fraudulent behavior with the introduction of the KYCs and AML and the digitization of KYCs and AMLs. It will become.
You're on mute. Wasim, you're on mute.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, evidently these capabilities will be leveraged by governments. And of course, the verticals that are going to be associated, the creating of new verticals and the interconnection of those verticals will facilitate the initiatives of the e-governments and digital governments Again, all integrated into a single platform where the cost of transaction and the ease of transactioning and the transparency of transactioning will become paramount for digital governments to function in a efficient way, in a transparent way, and on a digital governance model. So this digital governance model is going to be prime for the governments going forward.
Thank you. In a minute, we are trying to round up. In a minute, Tony, what's your take? What are the opportunities for governments and
Yeah,
nations?
look, I agree with Wasim there. I think for governments and nations, I think the key is how do you make this, ubiquitous? How do you move to a decentralized payment system where blockchain payment types and smart contracts are just, seamless? It just happens. I think the issue for governments is, how do you do this in a way that safeguards the system and safeguards the users, the customers, be they businesses or individuals? And I think they see it as a way to increase financial inclusion. But I think one thing I would say is that Goldman Sachs came out with a piece there recently where they said within 5 to 10 years every asset and liability will be on the blockchain. So that starts to get you thinking about where this is heading.
Yeah, interesting. Chabel, what's the opportunity for governments and nations?
Well, the most important thing that we have to start with is educating people in power and regulators. So this is a key point, in my opinion. Beside that, we all know that the importance in fraud detection, fighting corruption and all that, but I want to share with you guys an example related to Lebanon economy. You all know what's happening currently in Lebanon. And for the people into blockchain, they know the double spending problem, the one resolved by Satoshi. Effectively, in Lebanon, we are currently facing a triple spending problem. Let me brief it. Lebanese people has money in banks. So the central bank borrowed this money from the commercial banks, and central banks lent to government during 30 years. Our corrupted governments spent the money. So for each $1 was spent, it's spent 3 times. And on ledgers, people still have numbers in banks. So I think we need a new Satoshi to resolve this problem. But I believe that central bank digital currency and the technology, which is blockchain, can help in a way, as Wasim mentioned, in governance and transparency. So people can track where are their dollars, where are their money, and all that. I believe that CBDC is a huge opportunity for governments worldwide into applying, let's say, this transparency that we all lack.
Interesting. Gillian, what's your take on that?
Just a couple of things to say there. I totally agree. The finance, all this quantitative easing that's happening, there has to be some sort of reconciliation in the world. So new financial systems are very important. Voting, we know that across the pond, the US president is saying that voting is corrupt. You put on the blockchain, it can't be. Identity is a huge thing. Again, for people who don't have maybe a passport, maybe if you're a refugee or displaced person, you haven't got a passport, you haven't got an address, how do you do your KYC? So identity on the blockchain would be huge. Land registration is also massive. We know before the 2014 Olympics in Rio, the government just cleared all the favelas out around Rio. All the slums were gone. But people thought they owned those slums and they just was torn up. So they're very important things. But the last thing I want to finish on in this case is that I'm the Irish diplomat to Liberland, which is a micronation between Bosnia and Croatia, was established 5 years ago. And they are building their governance on the blockchain. And the Sweden, which is Swedish W, and Ghostbusters, which are a Swedish EOS block producer, they're actually writing the governance. So that's a huge thing. A new country, a new micronation, which is going to base its governance on the blockchain. It'll be transparent. And wow, what an exciting experiment. So maybe other countries might take note going forward.
Interesting. We are rounding up, so we are done with today. But before that, just in seconds, just a closing remark from our guests. We will not be taking questions today. We are already out of time. Maybe subsequent edition will take some of other questions. So just a final remark, Tony.
Yeah, look, I think there's a huge future for blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think it's about taking time to get it right, because we don't want to get it wrong, because that would undermine confidence. But I think if we get it right, we will transform financial services, it will transform people's lives.
Thank you. Chabe, what's your final remark?
Well, we are in the period that the blockchain hype will be terminated very soon. And we're gonna start seeing some real applications worldwide in different verticals that might change our lives for hopefully for positive and for good.
Thank you. Julia, your closing remark.
I just think this whole area is amazing. I advocate a lot for women in blockchain because there's too few women are not well represented in STEM, finance, fintech, and especially in blockchain. So I advocate for women to get in because it's too important to be left to men alone. My little joke is if the Lehman Brothers had been the Lehman sisters, we might not have had the 2008 financial crash. So we need more women in here, obviously. But I remember giving a talk some time ago in Trinity in Dublin and for women, and girls come up to me after. They said, "Well, how do we get involved?" And I'm going, "Well, what are you doing?" "I'm a marketeer." "We'll be a marketeer in the blockchain industry." "I'm an accountant." "Be an accountant with a blockchain company." And often, one simple piece of advice to your listeners who want to get involved, like, how do I do it? If you have a LinkedIn profile, and you should have a LinkedIn profile if you're in business, stick blockchain in your tagline and see what opportunities will arise. I mean, I would normally say go to meetups, but they're a bit hard to go to these days, and it's a bit hard to do those things. But just stick blockchain. Yeah, well, there's virtual, but just stick blockchain in your LinkedIn profile, and that should open some doors for you.
Thank you very much. Wasim, what's your closing remark?
Blockchain is going into evidently the realization phase right now. A lot of opportunities associated with the blockchain. It is a disruptive. It has been disruptive. It will continue to be disruptive. So for all those entities that are disturbed by what blockchain is introducing, the earlier you embrace it, the better for you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We are grateful to Chabe Gustin, the co-founder at Blockchain Leaders, for joining us. Thank you, Chabe, for joining us.
Thank you, Lee.
We are also grateful to Gillian Gosset, a former European Parliament candidate on blockchain. She said, not expert, enthusiast. Thank you, Gillian.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me here.
We are also grateful to Wasim Jakas, who is a 4G, 5G blockchain telecom expert. Thank you, Wasim.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are also grateful to Tony Morene. Tony Morene is the managing partner of Beta Digital. Thank you, Tony, for joining us today.
Thank you, Lee. I really enjoyed that conversation.
We are also thank you very much. We are also grateful to our audience who took our time to join us. Thank you very much for joining us. We are also grateful to our sponsors, MTech Technology, Nimedis Ecosystem, and Podcoin. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. See you next time.
Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.